Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens continue to mistake regular Joe Schmo customers as employees. And in today's episode, yet another Karen learns the hard way after grabbing a customer who happens to suffer from PTSD. Oh boy, oh boy. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your stories to this email right here. So I worked at Panda Express my senior year, and didn't turn 18 until a few months after graduating high school. But my parents allowed me more freedom than most in my circumstance. I have a lot of fun stories from this time frame, but this one was my absolute favorite. So there was a Target next to where I worked, and I often stopped by to pick up snacks or sodas before work. Because my work shirt was red, I was often mistaken for a Target employee, but nothing like this. On one particular summer day, I went to Target while on break to buy a new water bottle. I had accidentally broken mine during my shift, and I wanted to get it replaced. While I was wandering the store with plenty of time to spare, I noticed that someone was following me. Now at first, I thought it was coincidence, but after the 5th detour aisle, I realized that she was really following me. Being only 17, I was actually a bit nervous, and I finally mustered up the courage to face her asking, can I help you with something? The woman, who happens to be a Karen, says, "It's about time. I've been trying to get your attention for forever now." I ask her, "Well, can I help you, or..." And she says, "Is this how you treat customers? Talk about poor customer service." At that, I was genuinely confused until I realized that she, like so many people before her, had confused me for a Target worker, despite the fact that I had a giant panda on the back of my shirt, along with the company name that said Panda Express. Now, these types of encounters were normally pretty easy, but this lady wasn't having it. I say to her, "Ma'am, I don't work here." To which the Karen says, "How dumb do you think I am?" At this point, we'd attracted the attention of a few employees who asked if we needed help, and they called for their supervisor. As I tried to reason with the lady, the supervisor shows up and took over the conversation asking, "Is there a problem here?" Karen says, "This employee is just walking around ignoring customers. She was extremely rude to me and I want her fired." The supervisor looks at me, sees the Panda Express logo on my shirt and says, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." And Karen says to him, "Are you calling me stupid too?" She then starts towards me, and I back away, trying to get behind the supervisor, while struggling to understand what the heck her problem was. The woman then reaches around the supervisor and tries to grab a fistful of my shirt or something. And she says, "See, she's wearing a red shirt, so she must be an employee. I want her fired." Thankfully, one of my mom's friends happened to be shopping that day with her kids, and she sees the woman holding me by my shirt at this point. My mom's friend immediately walks up to the woman with her kids and proceeded to grab the woman by the arm. My mom's friend then says, "What on earth do you think you're doing? Get your hands off that child right now." Karen pauses for a moment, looks from me to the woman and then back again and says, "She's not a child. She's a young adult." I tell the Karen, "I'm 17 years old, lady, and for the last time, I don't work here." Hearing me say that, you could hear a pin drop from across the room, and I thought that Karen was just gonna let go and leave me alone. However, she huffs and looks away, commenting how being a 17-year-old practically makes me an adult, and there was no excuse to act so rudely. My mom's friend, the employees, and the supervisor had enough by this point, and we're calling the police, while I was attempting to calm down. My mom's friend wanted to know where my mom was, to which I replied that she was likely at home since I had been working. My mom's friend actually paid for my water bottle and told me to go back to work so I didn't get in trouble, but she also warned me that the police might be coming by to talk to me. I didn't think anything of this and did exactly as she said, knowing that I was never gonna hear the end of it when my mom found out that night. As my mom's friend warned, the police did show up at work later that day and they asked me a few questions. My boss didn't seem to mind, as I explained what happened as soon as I got back. I never did hear what happened to Karen, but my mom told me not to let an adult grab me like that again, because they could be arrested for assaulting a minor. Yeah, as if OP had no choice in that matter, right? Like, that's definitely not the reaction I'd expect from a parent who's just found out their kid had been assaulted by a Karen. Hey, don't let people grab you because they could get arrested. Okay, mom, thanks. And listen, guys, if you don't work somewhere and you're in a situation like this, as soon as an employee or supervisor shows up, just get out of there. You don't have to stay and explain yourself. Let them deal with it, because you know what? I've read enough stories to know that sticking around does no good whatsoever. So I just found this sub, and I figured I'd share one of my few mistaken as an employee story. This is by far the worst one. So about 6 years ago, I worked as a phone rep for a telecom company. They had a security rule that you needed to wear a lanyard with your photo ID tag visible at all times. Otherwise, security could get you in trouble. So after a while of working there, I totally forget that I was wearing it sometimes. After this incident, I put myself into the habit of always removing it and putting it in my purse when I leave work. To the story. So one day after work, my husband and I stop at our local wholesale seller, Costco. I like to go during the week since it's less crowded and noisy, and I have PTSD and borderline personality disorder, so crowds and loud noises are really hard for me to handle at times. My husband is not only my partner in life, but he also acts as my emotional lifeline if I get triggered. Anywho, we've been there for about 10 minutes when my bladder reminds me that having a large tea at about 3 p.m. might not have been the best idea, and that we should probably find the restroom soon. I grab my cell phone, but leave my jacket and purse with my husband, and then head to the restroom. He walks me as far as he can, and then he waits with the cart in the book section. That's about 20 feet or so away from where I duck into the washrooms. I usually text him when I'm coming back out, and he can meet up with me. Now I have to admit, I was wearing a red dress shirt that day, but never in my dreams did I even expect to be mistaken as an employee who wears a red vest. I'm on my way back to hubby, who I can see about 20 feet away, when a woman, a Karen, starts talking to me as I'm walking by her. The Karen says, "Hey, do you know where some item is?" I say to her, no, I'm sorry, and I start along my merry way to my husband. Karen then says, "Excuse me?" Now here's one of my triggers, yelling at me. Yay, my heart rate goes up and butterflies start in my stomach. I stop dead in my tracks and turn back and just stare at her, giving her the what the heck look. She stalks up to me and practically snarls, "Where do you think you're going?" The woman is less than a foot away from me, and she's leaning forward in a very combative stance. Here's my trigger number 2, invading my personal space. At this point, I can feel my face growing hot and red as I get angry, scared, and panicked. And I say, "Excuse me?" The woman says, "You need to do your damn job and help me. What do they pay you for? Help me find this item." I then realize that she thinks I work there, and I should probably defuse the situation and get my triggered butt out of there. So I do the stupid thing and speak to her as I'm trying to get away from her to my husband so I can calm down. I can see him out of the corner of my eye as I start to turn, and he's noticed me and he's coming towards me. I say to her, "Oh, sorry, I don't work here." And that's when it happens. Trigger number 3. The Karen grabs my lanyard and she pulls on it, in effect, strangling me. And we have a winner, folks. I'm seeing red now, and She-Hulk is now engaged. The woman's actually pulling on my lanyard so I couldn't leave. And then the world for me disappeared completely. I'm told that I froze for a moment, shrieked, knocked her away from me, and then lunged at her with my hands out. Now fortunately, hubby's got the reflexes of a cheetah, and he managed to intercept me before I got a chance to rip out her eyes, or quite possibly her throat. He then gets me onto the floor, where I dissolve into tears. And the next thing I know is that yes, indeed I'm on the floor, that I've been crying, and not only is there several employees and managers there, but also security. I flip out and dissolve into sorries and tears again. I can hear the Karen shrieking at the manager for hiring unstable people to work in the store, and that she wants to press charges and sue the store. The manager's trying to get a word in edgewise that I actually don't work there. My husband, however, is being awesome, and he's helping me calm down. Once I'm down to the shakes, he puts a coat around my shoulders, stands up, and then he walks calmly towards the lady and the manager. Now here's a word of note about my husband. He's a goofball. He loves to joke and kid around. He's the king of dry wit and bad puns, and he's always smiling. Except when he's mad. That's when he shuts down and becomes very still and quiet. It's creepy and scary, and until that day, I hadn't really seen it directed to another living human at the time. At that point, Karen's still screaming, "I want her arrested and charged for assaulting me. Just wait until I speak to my lawyer. I'm gonna own your ass when I'm through with you." My husband tells her, "Go ahead and call the police. It won't do you any good." The woman then turns to him and practically growls at him saying, "You, stay out of this." My husband tells her, "No, you can shut your stupid mouth and listen to someone for once, or if you don't shut it, I'll finish what my wife started." He said this calmly, only emphasizing that I'm his wife, and Karen's mouth snaps shut and she gets a little bug-eyed. My husband says, "As I was saying, call the police. I want to press charges on behalf of my wife against this woman for assaulting her. Also, please call an ambulance. She has red marks on her neck from where this woman tried to strangle my wife." Hearing him say that, Karen screeches, "I did no such thing." My husband says, "Yes, you did." And again, Karen's mouth snaps closed and she's even more bug-eyed. My husband then says, "There's what, like 5 or 6 cameras pointed at this area?" My wife tried to leave and this woman grabbed her tag holder and pulled her back so hard that she's left marks on her neck. My wife, who has PTSD, was triggered by that and she tried to fight back. She's got no control and we have documentation from her doctors in regards to that, if you need it. Karen is still going off and she says, "Well, Costco shouldn't be employing people with mental issues where they can hurt normal people like me. She should be locked up." My husband tells her, "Listen, you need to realize that she doesn't work here and you have criminally assaulted another customer. Am I getting through now?" And yeah, my husband lost his cool completely with her at the end of that. Now, I love this man deeply. He's my knight in slightly dented and rusting armor. He's also my lifeline and my little bit of sanity when mine takes a brief vacation. When my husband gets mad, it's time to step back and calm down. The woman then went white as she takes a step back away from us. She then looks at him, the manager, me, then back to hubby, and then the manager. And the manager says, "I tried to explain that to you." Now the thing is, the woman then dissolves into apologies and she's trying to backpedal out of there before she gets herself into more trouble. And she happens to backpedal into the police officers the store called. So to make an already long story a little bit shorter, we explain our side, she explained hers, the manager showed the video and took pictures of my neck, and Karen gets a nice new pair of stainless steel bracelets. Me, I get a trip to the hospital, x-rays, more pictures, and some lovely anti-anxiety meds, and I was a zombie for about a week after, and a nervous wreck for about 3 months after. The woman made a deal, and she got off with probation, and we got victims' compensation. Unfortunately, I couldn't go into a Costco for a year after that without feeling anxious. So reading this post, guys, I'm not surprised it happened at Costco. People who pay for memberships often get a crazy sense of entitlement, and I love how the woman screams that Costco shouldn't hire people that might attack normal people like her. Like, yeah, lady, you're by far not even close to being normal if you're walking around trying to strangle people with their lanyards. Like, it really makes you think how often she does put her hands on actual employees. I went into a very large feed store for the very first time, and I was a little overwhelmed by the size of the place. A clerk directed me to the medications, and I was looking through them when 2 women in their early 30s, who I'll call entitled Karen number 1 and entitled Karen number 2, spot me, and they walk over. So Karen number 1 says, "Excuse me, but I'm looking for something for my horse." She then proceeds to tell me some sort of problem that I don't remember, with some piece of horse anatomy that's totally unknown to me. I say to her, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't work here." She then says, "But you're standing here in front of the medicines." I tell her, "I'm shopping, I don't work here, I'm sorry." And that's when Karen 1 and Karen 2 leaves for a few minutes. And then they returned, and Karen 1 says, "Okay, so you need to help us anyway." Karen 2 nods, and that's when I realized that this situation might turn into a Reddit post. I tell her, "I'm sorry, but I don't know anything about horses. You're gonna have to find someone who works here." Karen 1 says to me, "But I can't find anybody, and you're here. What's that in your hand? Does it help horses?" I exclaim, "What?" Karen 1 then gives a loud sigh and says, "We need help with our horse. Will any of these help?" She then points to the shelf. And I say, "I don't know anything about treating horses. Maybe call your vet. They might be able to help you." Karen then says, "But vets cost money, and they probably want us to bring them in." Karen 2 just nods again and says, "Just tell us what you think will help." Again I say, "But I don't work here, and I don't know anything about treating horses." I decide to walk away and come back later, like maybe they'll find something for their horse's problem, and I'll be able to shop in peace. A little while later, I returned to the same aisle, and it was empty. I wanted to get a few things for my chickens, but nope, they spot me and they're headed back for another round. That's when I knew this post would probably happen. Karen number 1 comes up to me again and says, "Look, we need something for the horse. If you don't know anything about medicines, you wouldn't be in this aisle. And we don't want to call the vet because it's so expensive. We're not taking him in. If you don't know, why don't you call someone who does?" Karen 2 says, "Yeah, we can't afford it. We're not going to the vet. We just need some medicine for him." At this point, I just look at them and say, "You want me to call a vet for you? It sounds like you need to call your vet. Maybe they could advise you over the phone because I don't know anything about horses. I'm here looking for stuff for my chickens. Again, I know nothing about treating horses." Now at this point, a clerk must have heard me raise my voice because he comes over and Karen 1 and 2 immediately go over to him, complaining because their horse needed help and that I would not help them. I then head straight for the registers, and I could hear the women saying that they don't want to pay for a vet. I just hope that poor horse got the help he needed. Guys, I'm a little bit worried for that horse too, especially since they said taking it to the vet was too expensive. And with the way those two were just asking any random stranger if this or that medicine is good for treating a horse, you know it's probably not getting the treatment it needs. Don't get the pet if you can't afford the vet. So this is one of my few quite fond memories from working in retail. I worked in a kid's clothing store in a mall that's local to me, and we have no real set uniform, except for a baby blue lanyard that's around our necks that says, "Ask about rewards." My manager also said nothing about not putting pins on them, so naturally, I put a couple of my favorite pins on mine. I had a skeleton cat pin, Bob Ross, and a pin that says multilingual. The last pin was very important and helpful to me because I have a lot of customers that don't speak English primarily, and at times, they don't have a translator or a family member to help. I'm also the only employee at this place that can speak another language other than English, and I'm glad I can use it to help others who don't understand it. I speak Spanish, a bit of native Hawaiian, and a fair bit of Japanese. So one day as I got off my shift, I decide to muck around a bit, so I go shopping at a store that I get my jeans from. I walk in, and then feel a slight tap on my shoulder. I turn to see a sweet, gentle-faced grandma looking at me like she needed help. She looks at me like she was trying so hard to find the right words, but kind of stopped herself like she was nervous. I then ask her, "Do you need help finding something?" I immediately went into customer service mode, even though I'm off the clock, and this isn't my store. The woman gives me a blank shake of her head and she says, no English. Naturally, I spring into action. I then ask if she speaks Spanish. It's always good to make sure because I don't want to embarrass her. The woman says yes, and I carry on asking her in Spanish what she's looking for. The woman smiles and tells me how she's shopping for her grandkids, but she has no idea where to look. I cease my shopping and help the sweet woman, who carried on telling me about her family, how she's visiting from Mexico, and how excited she was to see her babies. I help her find a good sum of items, and even offer to help pay for some of it. I had gotten a good paycheck that week, and I was gladly going to pay for some of it. The woman wouldn't let me, but she gave me a sweet hug, and then asked me to follow her to the register. I help her there, translating for her, as she asked the lady at the register questions, and then she asked me to tell the lady this. She says to me in Spanish, "Tell this lady to get your manager for helping a poor grandma. You're a good employee." I smile a bit and told her I would. Now I didn't want to embarrass her by telling her that I don't work at this store, but I still hold this memory close to my heart. The woman bought her things, waved me goodbye, and I went on my shopping with a smile on my face. She was such a sweetheart, and I really hope her visit with her grandkids was fun. Guys, I love wholesome interactions like this, and I know many of you guys do too. Like, a wholesome story once in a while is always a nice one to read, right? With all the crazy ones out there. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy Karen stories. And if you guys missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A crazy Karen tries to harass OP over a cat, and she gets taught a lesson she won't forget. Guys, if you haven't heard it, go check it out, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.